Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, say hi. What have you been up to?
Hello. To be honest, not a lot on my end. I've been mostly preparing alongside my partner. We've been preparing, hosting, and tidying up after our daughter's 5th birthday, which you and your partner and your young lad was invited to. The chaos of of many children on a bouncy castle was never more evident than today.
I think the best analogy I can think of for that is sort of cage match wrestling, sort of Hell in a Cell, like kids clotheslining each other and just jumping all over the place. It looked savage.
It did look savage, yeah. But no, not much other than that. I'm a bit jealous of like last week I was like my brother sent in a load of nice videos. This week my mum has sent in some nice videos that I'm putting up behind us right now. I've already shown you the polecat and the deer. Although actually I say I was jealous. I've seen a red deer doe on 2 occasions, very close to me. Once in the van, once in my partner's car. You can see the video of it as we're in the car driving past at night. So yeah, that was quite lucky. I enjoyed that. Yeah. But other than that, not much. Dreading the impact of some global political things and how they're going to impact the natural world, but that might be a bit of extra content we could do.
What, us panicking?
No, yeah, just running around a burning wood. Oh! No, I mean like how they might be an interesting video to do. Like what does the incoming Trump 2 mean for the environment? But yeah,
I'm gonna go with not good.
Not good. No, I can't imagine it will be. What have you been up to? Let's move on to something happy.
Well, you say happy. It didn't end happily. This weekend I went to the rugby for the first time in a very long time.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah,
Wales, Fiji, and saw Wales lose to Fiji, and that's their 10th loss in a row. And it's just, I mean, the game itself, like, despite the loss and despite some really bad decisions, this is going to turn into a sports podcast, despite that, really good seats, just a good, atmosphere. There's nothing like going to the Millennium Stadium, and it's the Millennium Stadium in my mind. It's not the Principality Stadium. With the roof closed, them blaring AC/DC before they come out, the lights, it's like a disco sort of thing. They've got massive flame jets, because it's Wales, it's dragons.
Yeah,
so
stuff.
You can feel the heat coming off the flames as well as they like blast them out to get everyone hyped before they come out. It's real sort of spectacle and show and everything. It's really good.
I didn't know rugby had like that spectacle element to it. I thought that I didn't think that the English did spectacle when it comes to sport.
Because they're not English, they're Welsh.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But I'd like to point out they were doing that at Wales games before they started doing all the other like rugby games, because it was the whole dragon thing, like dragon fire and all that. And you had the Fijians doing the Sibi, which is their version of the haka.
I was going to say,
I think it's the
only I hesitate to use the word theatricality, but the only kind of like explosive extra bit of rugby that I've ever seen is like the haka and that.
Watching that, I got to admit the haka's better. That's just my take on it, because the All Blacks are they put on more of a show, I think, in some ways. And like watching it, it's still really good to watch, but yeah, I think the All Blacks put something a bit more menacing into it. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to go staring down a bunch of angry Fijian rugby players. But
I might not like rugby, but like I just imagine if I turned up to like the field to play and then someone started doing the haka, I'd be like, You ball. Walk away.
Well, I've lost.
I'll be such a wimp.
But it's yeah, no, it was good. Well, I mean, we went dragon spotting as well, so I suppose you
yeah.
could say that was the wildlife. Is trying to get a 4-year-old to spot as many dragons as he can in Cardiff, which surprisingly easy to do at that point. But yeah,
It's the coolest flag in the world.
I think it's certainly up there. Yeah. It's I can't think of many flags that have really cool animals on them.
No.
Real or mythical. So yeah,
very cool flag.
I don't think anything else I've really encountered or done this weekend. Like I say, it's been a lot of traveling, of going places. I mean, I could say I did a bit of bird watching in the river there. Some ducks and some gulls.
Muscovy ducks?
No.
Every time I go to Wales, I seem to see Muscovy ducks. Don't know why.
These are just normal mallards.
Popular domestic one, I guess.
But no, that was my jaunt out this week. And other than that, I think I heard a tawny owl today as I was sort of leaving work, just sort of as it was getting dark. May have been one, not sure. So it was in the distance somewhere. Yeah. Should we head into the news?
Let's do it.
Hopefully it's not all doom and gloom.
Don't think it is.
It's the news!
Right, well, we're into this week's news, and I'm going to start things off. Now, I've got 3 whale stories for you this week.
Well.
Yes. One good, one bad.
One ugly.
And one not ugly. No, one ruddy mysterious.
Oh, okay.
Shall we say. So we'll start off with the good.
Okay.
And then we'll end with the mysterious for you. So this is from BBC News, and it's the news that a humpback whale that was tangled in a creel line has been set free. And this is off the coast of the Forth of Clyde in the sea loch of Loch Finn. Essentially, the British Divers Marine Life Rescue, who we have talked about more than a few times on this podcast, a brilliant group that do amazing work, used underwater cameras to basically find the fishing equipment that had wrapped around the whale's body and head and twisted through its mouth. They basically released the creel lines and set the humpback free.
Brilliant.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, that's a huge amount of training to be able to do something like that, but it must be so rewarding seeing that whale just going
off and being able to have another chance at enjoying its day. Yeah. So my first article comes from Sky News, and it's the news that a fossil of a huge terror bird has been found in Colombia. The new fossil dates back 12 million years and is a Forus racid.
Forest Rocket.
Forest Rocket. Thank you.
We've done a creature feature on them.
We have done. To my shame. It's a partial leg bone that was found in the early 2000s, only just now having its description published. The fossilized remains suggest that the bird may have been up to 20% larger than the largest of its known to science relatives.
Nice.
Yes, it's a big animal.
So my next whale-based one actually comes from the BBC as well, because I started going down a bit of a whale
of a time. A whale of a time.
Whale hole? It's not a blowhole? I don't know. What's the whale version of a rabbit hole of things? But essentially, this is a washed-up whale left to rot naturally for months.
Oh, yeah?
It's bad in that obviously it's a dead whale, but it's actually good as well, because the carcass of this fin whale that has been found on a beach near Culrose in Scotland is actually... it's acting as important food for an awful lot of animals around in the area. So the decision was made to essentially let this 17-meter long whale carcass, which was discovered on the beach, basically near a power station in January, just sit there and rot. for
So
9
it was
months.
it was a carcass, not just a bone.
A whole thing.
That's another thing we need to do a little bit of extra content on, is why that is so good and why not doing that with deer and stuff is actually hurting the ecosystem in the UK.
Because we're clearing them up, basically, yeah. So Fife Coast Guard and Countryside Trust, which deals with the strandings of whales on behalf of the council, later said it would be left in its original location to decompose naturally, and it's said to be in the latter stages of decomposition and expects to be fully decomposed within the next few months. But you think of all the nutrients that are going into that area.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is it probably stinks to high heaven. From the picture, it is very much, in the rotting stage.
Yeah,
it's been there for 9 months. So, yeah.
Oh, very good. So my next article comes to us from Live Science, and this news that a meteorite 100 times bigger than the dinosaur-killing space rock may have nourished early microbial life. So in a bit of a twist from the usual news when concerning meteorites, a study of an impact site dating back around 3.26 billion years revealed that the only living things around back then, microbes, actually benefited from this cosmic smackdown, suggesting that the impact and resulting tsunamis would have actually released integral nutrients into the environment at the time.
Cool. So my third whale story for you.
It's welcome.
It's very good, very good. This one also comes from the BBC, who seem to be doing all whale news all week this week. It's runaway spy whale fled Russian military, says marine scientist. So you may remember a couple of years ago, there was the story of a beluga whale that turned up in a Norwegian fishing village with a strap sort of on its body that had basically property of St. Petersburg sort of embossed on it. So it was fairly obvious it had come from Russia, or at least the equipment had. But this beluga whale hung around this Norwegian town for quite a while, until unfortunately it died a year or two back from having a stick stuck in its mouth.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a really sad end for it. I suspect, but I don't know, that it may have been a case of someone's thrown a stick, for it, because it became very much a celebrity in the local area. People wanted to see it. Well, now there is a bit of extra information that has come out. A Ukrainian scientist who was basically working in Russia at the same sort of time, or that these whales were being kept and trained, has essentially been passed information that the whales themselves were being used not as spy whales, but as guard whales.
Oh, yeah.
In a Russian naval base. There is also satellite footage of a sea pen with two or three beluga whales in this sea pen that is apparently there. There is also descriptions of this particular whale, as it was known in Russian circles when it was known to other scientists, that it was a very intelligent animal, which belugas are, but also had a bit of a rebellious streak, hence why it may have set itself free. So yeah, basically it would appear that these whales are being trained as sort of guard whales, which I can't really see how that works too well as a...
What's it going to do? Entertain you to death?
Well, it can't bark at you. It's not going to make much of... I think there are better ways. I love the thought of having guard whales because it's just insane. But at the same time, as humans, we've come up with far better technological means that don't require us to train a whale to guard things for us, which could then go AWOL or a whale and go off and live in a Norwegian village. So, yeah, there you go.
There's a US
spy whales.
US sub coming. What should we do? Release the belugas. Yeah. It's not quite got the same impact as Release the Kraken.
No, they're not really very threatening whales. If it was Release the Orcas, that I could see as a guard whale.
Yeah.
That I could see fully being a guard whale. But funny. Release the beluga, even narwhals, they've got a pointy bit,
Yes. Stabby, stabby.
Yeah.
Yeah, Phil, that's completely thrown me off the news segment. My next article comes to us from The Guardian. And the article is How Sea Eagles Are Being Returned to the Severn Estuary After 150 Years. So it looks like a direct reintroduction of white-tailed sea eagles may be on the cards for southwest England and South Wales, as innovative techniques are being used to rear birds in preparation to repopulate the Severn Estuary, where
Nice.
they once fished, obviously. Now, the team leading the project are considering taking young birds from Norway and rearing them using sea eagle puppets, which is actually a technique that I've come across in zoos. I've seen hornbills raised with hornbill puppets.
Californian condors.
Condors, yeah.
Storks, all of
It's
these birds. Sandhill
something
cranes.
very, very, very successful. So hopefully it can be successful here. But yeah, now cue the National Farmers Union claiming the eagles predate on their livestock, despite evidence that the birds have scavenged lambs but never actively hunted them. But with Britain being one of the most nature depleted countries in the world, with 1 in 6 of the species that can just about cling on here currently considered threatened, the NFU can STFU.
I was going to get you to explain that, but no.
And that just about wraps it up for this week's news segment, at least for the headlines. We'll now head into the main discussion arena with Gareth taking the lead on this one.
So, I've done Wales. This one is not a Wales story.
Right, okay.
Nor is it from the country of Wales.
I was going to say, it's set in
No,
Wales.
it's not. This is also another animal that has gone AWOL.
Right.
This is from Sky News. This is the news that the first emperor penguin has been found in Australia after a 2,000-mile journey from Antarctica.
Wow.
So emperor penguins are your very classic Antarctic penguin that you think of. There are only 2 species of penguin that spend year-round in Antarctica, these guys and the Adelie penguin. But for the first time, there is an emperor penguin that has turned up in Australia. A rather malnourished emperor penguin has basically has basically traveled the 2,200 miles north to Australia from the Antarctic coastline. The male was discovered on the 1st of November on a tourist beach in the town of Denmark. So we've got a lot of Denmark in today's episode. In southwestern Australia, so in Western Australia itself. The emperor penguin basically turned up there and was essentially malnourished from presumably a very long way of swimming. And how it's got there, no one's 100% sure. It's probably got lost. It is an adult as well, so this isn't like the first time it's been, out and about. If you remember as well, that appears to be the main plot point in Happy Feet. So maybe it's the real life Happy Feet, because he seems to turn up in I would say Australia by the looks of it, but I could be wrong. But anyway, Belinda Carnell from the University of Western Australia has said that she's got no clue why it had taken such a long journey and presumably a very wrong turn. Although some emperors have basically turned up in New Zealand before, it's a lot further south. Whenever you see Australia and New Zealand on a map, usually because it's a flat projection,
they usually look close together and
a little bit
side
off
by side, but it's not.
They're a lot closer to Antarctica than Australia is. But the 1 meter tall bird weighs around 23 kilos when it was found, but a healthy male should weigh about double that, about 45.
Right.
So it is severely underweight, which is quite sad, actually. He's being cared for at a seabird rehabilitation centre, and they've actually set up a chilled water sprayer to keep him cool. So he's got like a sort of a fan to basically cool him down. Now, they're not sure yet whether they're actually going to be able to successfully get him back to Antarctica, but there is talk underway to basically try and do exactly that, try and ship him back there. It is now the Antarctic summer, so presumably they'll have to try and get him fed up very quickly and back to health to be able to get him back there before Antarctic winter. which you kind of get the feeling that if they don't have him ready to go within the next week or two or something, which is not going to happen, I don't think.
No.
He's probably going to be there until this time next year or a little bit earlier this time next year to get him back, because you wouldn't want to drop him back there middle of the Antarctic winter. Also, from a logistics point of view, it's going to be almost impossible. So
you want to try as best as you can. It's the same as if you're moving abroad with a pet, you want to try and move when the climates are as similar as conditions as possible. That's really interesting. He's been, as unlucky as he sounds, been like more than half the weight he should be. Sorry, less than half the weight he should be, and being completely lost and out of sorts. He's insanely lucky.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's not just drowned and died out at sea.
To make it with enough energy to be alive at the other side, to have not drowned, to have not been
picked off by predators.
You're talking about like Antarctic predators that it would have evolved to kind of escape or be caught by, but also predators it wouldn't have ever come across. Like
white sharks, bull sharks, tiger sharks. Yeah.
That's an insane journey with insane hurdles stood between you and safety.
But I really hope it does survive and does get to go back to Antarctica. That would be the ultimate thing. And I think there's one that will definitely end up following, hopefully, as more news of it comes out.
Yeah.
But yeah. Should we move into this week's creature feature?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
We could move into it.
It's the creature feature.
Right, well, we're into this week's creature feature. Aaron, what are we looking at?
This week, we're looking at the most massive species of extant deer alive today. Gareth has very kindly guided us through the Megalosaurus. So today, we'll be looking at moose or elk, depending on where you are from. And when I say most massive, what I mean is massive in the truest sense of the word. This deer is the heaviest, tallest, and largest of all deer species alive today. And they have a really impressive set of antlers to go with it. So what do moose kind of weigh in at? So we're talking about a whopping 634.5 kilograms at their largest.
That's quite bulky.
That is a bulky animal. For you guys across the pond in America, that's 1,399 pounds. And they stand in at a neck jarring 2.1 meters tall, which is 6'11". Yes.
Is that at the shoulder or at the head?
I believe that's at the shoulder.
Oh, so they're even taller than that.
Yeah. They were very much so, because that allows them to basically tower over the next largest size deer, which is a species that is definitely worthy of creature feature treatment as well, and that is, of course, the wapiti.
Yeah.
Which, funnily enough, is called elk as well in some locales.
Elk, and elk.
And we'll come on to why, I think, in a bit. Now, for a bit of fun, I thought we could do some comparison work. So, for the sake of brevity, I will literally only deal with height and weight, and I'll only use the metric system. Sorry, guys in America.
But learn the metric system.
Learn the metric system, because it takes too long to go through it otherwise. So since I've already mentioned the wapiti, we'll start there. So American and Russian cupboard dwellers, your next largest deer species is, of course, the wapiti, and that measures in at 1.8 meters and 497 kilograms. So it's still a massive animal, not one that you want to corner.
Although you will see loads of footage of people in like Yellowstone and various different places getting as close as they can to full-grown male wapiti, and then learning very quickly what those antlers are used for.
But those are the same people that would take a bison cup and put it in their car. So you know, how is it? What do the Australians? How do they phrase it? It's the typical Australian beautiful way of saying things. Is I think it's. Oh, I can't say it on the podcast, so I just say F around and find out.
Yeah. I wonder where you're going with that.
Yeah. So for the next jump. We're jumping on over to Europe. So
Mhm.
European cupboard dwellers. Your next largest species of deer is, of course, the red deer. And that one comes in at 1.4 meters and 240 kilograms. So again, it's a big animal.
We've got a decent deer collection now. With this one,
Yeah.
we've got the megaloceros
Megaloceros
and the red
elk,
deer
the red deer, and reindeer.
and reindeer. Yeah,
Which unfortunately I did for Christmas, and I wish I hadn't, because reindeer are my favorite species of deer, and they definitely deserve a full
well,
creature
maybe you could
feature
do a
treatment.
special on them. Or something.
Maybe in future,
Yeah.
yeah. So then we'll fly on over from Europe to Asia this time, and our Asian cupboard dwellers may be more familiar with sambar deer, which is of course better known as tiger food.
I was going to say tiger food. Yeah.
Now, sambar are big as well. They stand in at 1.6 meters and 350 kilograms. These animals are all big, big Hoose stock species. And for our cupboard dwellers down under, the introduced invasive species that annoy you have likely already been listed. So I'm not going to go too much into it. But for example, I do know that between Australia and New Zealand, I think they've got red sambar and wapiti all introduced.
I think, yeah.
So they've already been listed, obviously. But
And fallow deer as well.
they
I
have
think.
got
Yeah.
fallow, but fallow are
Much smaller.
substantially
Yeah.
smaller, yeah. But surprisingly, Africa is a bit of an odd one.
It's a
They're
deer
bit
desert.
difficult. A deer desert, yeah, but it wasn't always that way.
Oh.
See, African cupboard dwellers, if we do we have any African
think,
cupboard
yeah,
dwellers?
yeah.
I think we do, yeah. You guys only have one extant species of deer. You did have deer in the past, confined to the northern reaches, I think the Mediterranean kind of African countries. But yeah, you only have one extant deer nowadays, and it's a red deer offshoot that's called the Barbary stag.
Ah.
It is a red deer. It is distinctive, but it is still a red deer. And we've already kind of covered that. It's actually heavily debatable as to whether or not this animal is native to the
Or
Atlas
introduced.
Mountains, or whether it was, yeah, it's an ancient introduction. We're
Hmm.
talking about like at least Roman era
Living
introduction.
Romans. What they've
Yeah.
done for us.
So actually, it's smaller than the mainline red deer. So again, nonetheless, it's the largest species by default in Africa.
Hmm.
Now, if you go on to South America, their largest deer is only being
Hang on,
featured on there.
Isn't there something like a poodoo or something?
It's a marsh deer, yeah.
So
Which is a tiny animal. So that one stands in at 1.2 meters, and it's 125 kilograms.
it's
So
cute.
by comparison, even though it's your largest species of deer in South America, by comparison, it's minuscule compared to these. So you can see here just how huge moose really are. But it's not just the prehistoric size of the moose. It's not at all about height. For one thing, it measures 3.1 meters in length, and that's from nose to rump, essentially. So 3.1 meters for our American friends, that's 10 foot 2 inches. So they're not just tall, they're long too. But the animal is made all the more formidable, at least in appearance, by the addition of a huge set of antlers. They really are massive. And I think reindeer might just eke this out for me as well, but I think moose have the most impressive antlers in terms of shape too.
Definitely.
Because they do something called palm mating, which I think looks really impressive. But at their largest, moose antlers or elk antlers can span up to 1.5 meters across. That's 4 foot 11 inches. So this is a huge antler span. And as with most deer species, it's the males, the bulls, that carry this extra weight. The size and symmetry of which is dictated by diet and age, but strongly advertises the strength and virility of the owner, signaling its health and dominance to all potential mates and potential rivals. And I've got to say, if I was faced with those antlers, I would think twice about
not just the antlers. The animal itself is big enough and scary enough.
If I was a moose myself and came across something that had like 4 foot 11 inch antlers, I think I'd be backing down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they grow these antlers, interesting, they grow at right angles to the skull. So come out at a right angle to the skull, and they're nearly cylindrical at the kind of the trunk, the base area, if you were to do a cross section. And that's right before they split into the fork and create a forward-facing branch, just like well, reindeer and red deer certainly have a forward-facing branch. Now, on that forward-facing branch, the moose is 2 to 3 tines. Do you know what tines are?
Yes. So on a set of antlers, I learned this from a ex-police marksman.
Oh yeah,
who used to do like deer culling and things.
right.
And he showed, also learned how to dress a carcass as well from him. Basically, because he was culling a herd of fallow deer, and the thing I'd heard before about, like pointers, like points on a deer, would be to do with how many points are on other tines. How many tines are on a set of antlers on something like a fallow deer? It doesn't count because they have palms, so that wide sort of shield area where they have a few little bits. So I imagine the only tines would be the 1 or 2 of them that moose have on the front bits.
Yeah, so moose, you're quite right. The tines are basically like the fingers,
like
finger
the tines
shape.
on a fork.
Yeah. And there's only two to 3 of them in an adult moose. And that is also accompanied a little bit further back with a large flattened palmate region, which is kind of like the main kind of thing that you notice about the moose antlers, and that itself will spawn tines of its own. Now, the diameter of the initial beam of the antler, not the number of tines it terminates, it terminates in, sorry, that's what indicates age. So this bit that comes out from the head, the diameter of that is how you can tell the age of a moose. Though symmetry between the antlers actually declines the older the animal gets after reaching 13 years of age. So 13 is kind of their peak. Then they start to lose symmetry, and that's not as attractive to potential mates then. In terms of size across the moose range, the North American moose carries the largest, with the North European population not being too far behind. And then the European elk in the southern reaches of their European range, they tend to have not only smaller antlers, but they actually form in a more typical deer-like fashion. So they don't really palmate like the North European ones and the American and Canadian ones. Yeah, which is quite cool. And an interesting fact about moose antlers is that they are actually sonic amplifiers. Did you know that?
I'm just imagining a pair of speakers sitting in each one now.
Boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. Yeah. Studies that made use of trophy antlers and microphones show that the palmate nature of a moose's antlers acts as a parabolic reflector, and that amplifies sound and directs it into the bull's ears. So actually, the moose with the biggest, most palmate antlers actually
can hear for miles.
Far more. Yeah, it's far more likely to hear you make a comment about its caboose.
You can pick up all sorts of things with antlers like that.
So moose are not just unique for their size and antler assemblage. They're pretty weird to look at, even if you are used to seeing other deer species. For starters, and probably the second most immediately noticeable feature, is if you look at their schnoz. It's a proboscis as opposed to a snout.
Yeah.
Or a rhinarium of a typical mammalian snout. So rhinarium is where it's a naked snout, no hair on it, it's cold.
Yeah, like a dog's nose.
Yeah. These guys are furry, and it's kind of a bit hungover.
It is definitely I'd say the second most noticeable thing about a moose is that face.
Yeah. It's not just large either. A feature which is a feature that is useful for inhaling more air, potentially when on the run from predators. It's also equipped with nostrils that can close and open on command. And the reason for this is that it allows the moose to forage for aquatic plant life for sustenance. The nasal assembly also features a superior olfactory column, gifting moose with an exceptional sense of smell. And the reason that they need that is because of that plant life that exists under the water surface. They can smell it. So it gives them the ability to hone in on particularly lucrative pools, shall I say, as well as obviously smell
And they
predators
can
far
dive
off.
as well, can't they?
They can. They are excellent swimmers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't think of for an animal that big with hooves.
No, and it's it's partially to do with those hooves. Those hooves, they splay out so well that they act almost like the fins of a diver almost. Very, very cool animals. Now, under the chin of a moose is probably where the next most noticeable feature is hidden, and that is a dewlap, kind of like what you'd see with a male iguana, like a nice big dewlap flap of flesh. It's developed for mostly unknown reasons, though studies heavily support the idea that it is as a visual cue or an olfactory signaling device, as well as for thermoregulation, because that big flap of skin
lets off heat.
It lets off heat during the hotter months. Now, moose as a species have a pretty extensive range. We've already covered that they are found in the Americas and in Europe. The 6 subspecies of North America can be found across the entirety of Canada, with the exception of Vancouver Island and the Arctic, and the northern United States of Alaska, Colorado, Idaho, Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, New England, New York, North Dakota, Oregon, Utah, Washington, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. That was the other one that I
But not South Dakota.
Not South Dakota. No, not South Dakota. In Europe, we're looking at populations in the following countries: so Belarus, Czech Republic, Denmark, in Zealand specifically, Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Norway, Poland, Scotland, although I hesitate.
Sorry.
Yeah, I hesitate to include them.
Mostly because they're extinct.
No, it's just a single breeding pair up there.
Yeah, but they're not wild.
Yes. However, when I covered Wysant, I included the population in Kent, and they are not wild either.
All right, fair enough.
So I wasn't going to include them until I remembered that I included the Kent Wysant ones. And as much respect as I have for that project, they're not wild. They're in a big cage.
Fair enough.
Enclosure, sorry.
I love the fact that you clearly you knew that I was going to say that, because that's literally your next line on your script.
It was my next line on there. Yeah, yeah.
You came prepared today.
I did.
I have receipts.
Other countries in Europe that you can find them in are Slovakia, Sweden, and Ukraine. The Ukraine ones we should probably worry about.
Well, yes, yeah.
Especially.
I mean, to be completely honest, I think we should worry about most of the American ones as well.
Oh yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah.
Yes, the world is changing quite rapidly, unfortunately, and not in the right direction.
No.
Moose can be found naturally occurring in Asia, which I didn't know until doing this creature feature, because I didn't realize that they could be found in Russia.
I suppose, yeah, technically that means that they could. How far into Asia do they go?
So when we talk about Eurasia and when we talk about Russia, we tend to think of Russia as this country that kind of
spans across the top of the whole thing.
Am I European? Am I Russian? Am I Asian? These guys, this population of moose, can actually be found in central and eastern Russia. So truly the Asian side of it.
Wow.
As well as Mongolia and northeastern China.
Yeah, that's a lot. I do not associate moose with that part of the world. No,
it just makes Asia an even more superior kind of continent for biodiversity.
Yeah.
You got if you want lions, you got lions there. Don't need to go to Africa for lions. If you want leopards, don't go to Africa for leopards. You can go to Asia.
No marsupials.
No, there are no marsupials.
Yeah, got you there.
Yeah, that's true. There aren't any. No, there's not.
No, there's not. There's only 3 parts of the world that have marsupials.
Exactly, yeah, and Asia's not one of them.
No.
So all in all, a pretty vast range, but their survival in this range hinges on relatively specific habitat types and probably relatively specific politicians. They require up to 28 kilograms, roughly 60 pounds of browse per day, and as such, obviously need habitat offering ample amounts of edible plant life. The habitats also need to provide plenty of cover to avoid predation and shelter from extremes of temperature. They don't do particularly well in habitats that are too cold or too hot, but especially too hot. I guess that's pretty obvious. But they prefer habitats with some snow, as the lack of snow actually makes it easier for predators such as wolves to take moose down. But too much snow obviously makes it harder for them to traverse the territory. So it's kind of like there's a Goldilocks level of snow. Yeah.
You don't want gold snow.
No, you don't. No. For this reason, not for yellow snow, but for the reason that they need the perfect kind of snow coverage, they've adapted to best suit shrublands in early winter and tree-covered river valleys or alpine elevations during late winter, and spend much of their time throughout the year in temperate, deciduous, and boreal forests. Here, their heat-retaining fur and thick skin allows them to maintain comfortable body temperatures during colder spells, whilst the trees provide cover from the warmer spells, because it can get surprisingly hot where they live. The all-important snow depth is countered by the even-toed hooves that I spoke about earlier, as because the hooves of the moose, they can spread quite substantially, which allows that massive weight that they bear to be spread across the snow's surface more evenly and more widely, as it kind of splays outwards and pressures applied. The hooves also help to maintain a modicum of agility in deep water. We've kind of covered that because they'll actually cool off in pools during the summer, as well as foraging for plant life, obviously. Now, when not foraging, I can't really say that moose are socializing. Unlike many herding deer species, moose are solitary, save for the relationship between a cow and her calf. Now, in relation to the reproductive behavior of these animals, the rut actually begins in September and mating may run through to October. So right now, we would have just come to the end of the moose rut, in much the same way as the red deer rut will be slowing down too. Around now, we've stopped hearing the red deer so much at the moment, but hopefully it's not too far gone just yet, because it's quite cool to hear it. During this time, mature bulls fast for 2 weeks, and they dedicate all their senses and all their energy to the detection and analysis of moose urine, which sounds like a fantastic pastime, as they basically search for a mate and they size up rivals. Because, as I've said before, you can tell an awful lot by the urine and the poo of an animal.
Yep.
Now, the following gestation period that occurs after successful mating can last up to 8 months, leading us through to May or June of the following year, at which point, again, moose life is dictated by food. Years of plenty can see twins being born, but years of little tend to only see single calves born, which makes sense because there's not as much resources to go around and mum isn't producing as much milk as a result. Now, these calves will stay with their mothers until their siblings are born from the next rut season, and if they're lucky, they may live to see 15 to 25 years of age, and that's in the wild. So that's a pretty good innings, especially as after
for a prey
13,
species like that.
For a prey species, for a species that seems to peak at 13, the males anyway seem to peak at 13, and then, as I say, the antlers start to lose their symmetry between the two, and so they become less attractive to potential mates. But then if it's an old bull who's proven his dominance over the seasons, he can hold on to land for a long time. Hold on to a patch. So now I want to talk about their names. Now, full disclosure, as I researched this, I had no idea whether elk or moose actually came first and who named which one what.
Well, I would say presumably whatever we called them in Europe came first.
Well,
I only say that because obviously English speaking, or going to America, obviously there would be First Nations names for them, but
that's kind of partly where I was going, like the Europeans are the First Nations, but it's also whether or not the names that we use now, or as many names are, kind of passed down and corrupted through time. In this case, they actually are.
I'm going to take a bet that at all. I'm going to take a bet that it's Norse. somewhere along the line.
Very good. Yeah.
It's always Norse, especially up in that part of the part of Europe as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I really had no idea which one came first. And included in that ignorance of mine is I didn't know where the Wapiti's elk moniker originated either, or at least I didn't know where it originated. Sorry, I didn't know how it came into the conversation. So this was a school day for me too. So as I mentioned, as is generally understood, I feel the North American English speakers call the species moose, whilst the European English speakers call it elk. Now they are the same species, different subspecies, but it's not exactly that simple.
Can I take a bet?
There. Yeah.
I literally know nothing about this either. I'm going to say moose has French origin.
Okay. Yeah.
Just the word looks.
It does.
French.
Now you say that, it does look French. It does.
But yeah,
you're actually
way off
if
track.
we're going with elk came from Norse and moose came from French, you're kind of 50% in the right ballpark, but not all the way there. So yeah, in ancient Greece, the animal was known as alki, which sounds a lot like algae now that I say it out loud. But yeah, it was alki. Now in Latin, that's ulcers, or alcus. Is it alcus or alces? I can never remember which way to pronounce it, but it doesn't really matter because you can already see where elk is coming from now.
Yeah.
And these are actually, they're likely corruptions of some classical and antiquated Germanic name for the animal. So we think that the ancient Greeks weren't the ones that actually named it alki. We think that actually they got alki from a Germanic tribe that they would have met. Yeah. So in the we're moving on now. In the 8th century, the Old English term H was used, and I said that horribly, by the way. It's elch, not H. So elch, and this seems to be the compounding corruption of the Proto-Germanic word elo.
Hello.
I knew I wasn't going to say that.
Hello.
Hello. And the Old Norse word elgo.
Hello, Elga.
Hello, Elga. As the Old English gave way to Middle English, the term elch became elk, and it largely remained in use right up until the 17th and 18th century, when English speakers were seldom likely to actually encounter the animal anymore.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, by which point elk had gone from a specific deer species in the minds of the English, at least, to any deer species of a size near comparable to a horse. And that, I feel, is where elk has been used to describe the American wapiti.
Yeah.
Because it's a big horse. And 17th, 18th century would have been kind of that kind of not too far off that period. So at which point they're calling the red deer elk colloquially.
Yeah.
Okay. It's also sort of loosely around the earlier portion of that period that the word moose is first introduced to English speakers. So it's borrowed for the Algonquin language. So it's Native American, which, or I should say First Nation people. It's a First Nation people's name for it, which itself was likely using a colloquial corruption of similar sounding names found across different First Nation peoples.
It's not anything to do with there being juice loose about the Hoose.
No.
There's a moose loose about. Do you not remember that ad?
Not at all.
Oh, it was for like fruit pastels. And it was
no. I don't remember it.
There's a moose loose about the Hoose.
I'm gonna have to look this up on YouTube now.
It's very good.
To be fair, what I was about to say is that these older, similar native First Nation names for moose that probably would have sounded similar, they probably were themselves corruptions of similar older names from those that came before them.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's quite a bit of history for the word moose, which is again kind of compounds the fact that I generally had no idea whether elk or moose came first, like in terms of the human tongue. Now, cave paintings depict moose hunts dating back to the Stone Age, with evidence of our relationship with moose, such as antlers found in wooden huts during excavations. dating back to 6000 BC. They would have been hunted initially using pitfall traps covered by branches and leaves to disguise them. The walls of these would have been supported by wood, which was what prevented the animals from climbing back out
Yeah.
and escaping. And the hole itself being found at the end of a funnel of wooden fencing. So they would actually drive their quarry into these pits, which is quite interesting. The aim of such a hunt would not necessarily have been for trophies, as many humans hunt today, but to feed their family or feed the community, and probably clothe them too, to an extent. Nowadays, moose is actually still consumed. In fact, in Alaska, one of the justifications for wolf slaughter, because I refuse to use the word cull with that, is to promote moose population growth. However, interestingly, scientists have found that this is in fact a false concept. They actually argue that there's evidence that not only does this significantly damage local wolf populations, but also I've said it again, the moose populations, and furthermore, the caribou populations too, and the wider ecosystem. Go figure, a species that is important to the ecosystem. Unfortunately, food isn't the only human-caused death. Road traffic accidents involving moose are harrowing for everyone involved. Due to their height and the bulk of their weight being above the bonnet, what actually happens is when the car collides with them, we basically take out their legs. They miss the bonnet entirely, and they hit the window and the top of the car, and this crushes the top of the car onto the people who are in the two seats in front.
I have seen a rather humorous moose car accident, though.
Yeah,
this one where the moose is okay, and the people were okay, as far as I'm aware. They basically hit it from behind, and the moose is sat in the passenger seat with his front legs and his back legs sort of hanging out onto the bonnet, just sort of sat there like.
But moose and human alike were fine.
I believe so. Yeah,
that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
because unfortunately, in most cases, both
moose
and
human
are they end their subscription to life. So that's not so fun. Train collisions also they feature on kind of the human moose kind of death conflict topic. Unfortunately, they are frequent too, especially in Europe, where we do have more trains. But the combination of vehicle moose collisions has led to some exciting projects, I guess, erecting fence lines, clearing nearby vegetation, and providing safe feeding options in the vicinity of train tracks and highways across Canada and Scandinavia. So at least positive steps are being taken.
Yeah.
Combined with this new kind of trend of building these wildlife corridor bridges.
Oh, the ones that go up and over.
Yeah. I mean, this can only help bring the death toll down. But yeah, on that kind of hopeful note for their future, that's the end of this week's creature feature on moose or elk.
You failed to mention one place that moose might be.
Oh yeah.
Have you heard? You also mentioned, and I thought you were going to mention this. You mentioned Zealand.
Yes, that's right.
In Holland.
Yeah.
But what about New Zealand?
Have
you heard?
I think I missed those out because I was talking about the next largest deer species.
No, there are no deer.
I was talking about their native.
Well, you included Australia in there.
Yeah, but that was for comparison with
other
non-moose deer species.
Well, supposedly there is the New Zealand moose.
Yeah, it's not been seen for a while, but they've seen some evidence in recent years, haven't they?
This sort of mysterious Fiordland moose that lives down in that part of the world, and there are people who are basically see it as the New Zealand Bigfoot. You know, this moose population,
the New Zealand beast,
which I find brilliant in some ways. I'd love to spend like ages just looking at the sorry, I'd love to spend ages down in that part of the world looking for a moose, this giant animal, which in theory I suppose could get very easily you could very easily lose one in that part of the world,
just disappear. And with a lifespan of 25 years,
well, it's about 50 years, I think, since the last recorded one. So,
right, fair enough. Well,
apparently they were introduced for the sport of moose hunting in New Zealand.
That's right.
Yeah,
The evidence that I mentioned when Gareth brought that up is they found a shed antler
that was it.
moose. I can't remember what year it was, but it's within the last 20 years.
Yeah, I think it's either very dead or very decrepit if it is.
Yeah. There was also, I believe, an area of grass that had been pushed down, like a moose kind of
Hobbit lay here.
sleeping. Yeah, hobbit lay. Another one here. Yeah, but I mean, when you got wapiti and other things there that maybe not as big but are big.
That could roll around a bit and make it look bigger.
I'm not sure.
Aliens.
The antlers, the interesting aliens.
Alien moose.
Yeah.
Sorry, alien moose. Yeah, oh, that's cool. Right, well, let's go into our emails then.
Let's do it.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
Right, well, we're into this week's emails. We're going to start things off with the question from last week, which was, what is your favorite South American mammal and why? We've had some good answers on this one. Drew has basically shot in there.
Drew.
Yeah. So Drew has said, as you guys said I would, pick in last week's episode, the giant anteater. It's the only answer. As for why, this should cover it. And he's basically linked an ant's worst nightmare, our giant anteater episode, which I would encourage people to go and check out. Actually,
it's a good one.
It's a good episode.
It's a good one.
I do quite like giant anteaters.
Yeah, they're a cool animal. Spencer Seams also comments. He says poodoo. Which I can't say
without hearing Sebulba.
Exactly, without hearing the dog from episode 1, Phantom Menace. So yeah, he says poodoo, the tiniest, I think, deer species in the world. To which I think it was me that answered them. I said, "You are correct. They are the smallest, and they are cool.
They do look cool.
They are very cool."
But yeah, I'm also in agreement. All I hear is
poodoo.
That's all I hear. So Jen Ashbridge has put silky anteaters are my favorite. They are quite a funky looking little species.
Cool.
Their faces, I think, the weirdest thing about them.
Yeah. Robin Clark says it has to be the Patagonian Mara. They've got great characters, quirky looks, and they make unexpected noises, which make me love them even more. Now, just for a bit of backstory, Robin actually used to work at one of the zoos that I worked at. We actually worked at the same one at the same time, and we both covered a section with Maras on it. So I'm kind of confused as to why she thinks they're good.
Okay.
I've commented back saying I think one of the hosts, meaning me, would say Mara might be one of his least favorite South American species that isn't a primate. I don't know if I mentioned this, but the reason why I can't stand Mara is because they're little hooligans and they bite each other. And then when they bite each other, they get like basically these abscesses that are like massive spots, and then it pops and there's pus and the field stinks. It's horrible.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's the same with most rodents. Rats are another one for it. And the capybaras, I remember, had the same sort of thing as well.
I would actually. I agree. It's a rodent thing. I'd also go one step further that it's probably actually captive population management problem there, not actually a problem with the Mara. Because if they had the right population number for that area and the right ratios, and then
extra space, I suppose. Yeah.
There you go.
And our final one comes from Zara Jackson. Coatis, cheeky little buggers. Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Yeah, the coatis are one of these really cool animals. They've got a special advantage over all other South American animals, and that is if you run footage of South American animals in reverse, they look like animals in reverse. If you run footage of coatis in reverse, it looks like tiny little brachiosaurs attacking something, and I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, all right, that's kind of cool.
That's a cool factoid. Okay, cool.
Oh, and I completely forgot, but to close things out, Aaron's got some from our YouTube's list.
Yeah, we got
YouTube's list. YouTube comments.
Yeah.
There we go. That's
we had someone answer this question on our YouTube comments, which is happening a little bit more frequently now, which is nice. And that is Rennington. And they've said that is an immeasurably hard question. The coolest South American mammal. There are so many options. All 3 anteater species are amazing and all deserve a mention. The jaguar is an obvious fan favorite. If you like that one, Rennington, check out the jaguar episode. But the short-eared dog, oh, I see, the short-eared dog, the bush dog, and the Maine wolf are all incredible choices. It sounds like Rennington parks his spaceship in the same shuttle bay as me, because that's
a good list of South American animals there.
They'd all be on my list. As well as the amazing giant river otter and the Paddington inspiration of the spectacled bear fuels my love for all Ursidaes. Then the fascination I have with tapirs in Planet Zoo is only rivaled by the Chinese pangolin. As for species I've directly worked with, yellow armadillos will always be a favorite of mine, along with llamas and alpacas, for not only the walks we took them on, but bottle feeding a cria, which is a baby alpaca, as he points out. The question is quite near impossible to choose from that list. I can actually tell from the way this is written, he really struggled in his soul with this one. I think it broke his heart to try and select one. But yeah, really good answers.
So that's last week's question. This week's question for you, based on moose or elk or whatever you want to call it, wherever you find it. We are looking at, I thought I'd ask a really non-controversial question. Which continent would you rather for spotting wildlife, North America or Europe? Now, Aaron, what's your initial thought?
My initial thought?
Where would you rather go spotting wildlife?
It's a question that I'm gonna struggle with, possibly similarly to Rennington with the last question that we posed, because a big part of me has always wanted to go to America. It was specifically North America, wasn't it?
North America. So I would say
Alaska and Canada.
I'd say Alaska and Canada, the North American continent, and the European continent.
See, I might have to go with my gut answer of North America, but I'll tell you why it's so difficult for me. So the reason why I would want to go North America is because you have the chance to spot more than two cats, but two very large cats, as well as the small cats that are over there. You've got wolves, which I'm keen on. Obviously, caribou, I'm keen on. Moose, and there's alligators. There's so many species in America, and that's just on land. You go in the sea and you've got all the cetaceans and stuff.
But I think you could probably say that, bar the grey whale, we've pretty much got the same cetaceans.
Yeah, but I think that they're harder to spot in Europe. Now, having said that, I am a big believer that you never really appreciate what's actually on your doorstep, and I've one of the two things that feelings that I came back from when I came back from Asia was I want to go back to Asia, but also it's like I didn't really appreciate what was in Europe, and I'd love to see some of the stuff we've got in Europe. Again, wolves, elk. I'd love to actually see wild boar in the wild, because I've not seen that. And then the cetaceans, the reptiles, the birds. So I think it's really close, but I think possibly it might literally hinge on the cats that I would end up going to
North America. I have to agree with you. And it's a couple of species that win it for me. Now, I had this discussion with Drew the other day about this question before we posted it. I like the North American bison more than the wisent. I think they're more impressive. I know, and
controversial.
I know. I just think they're bigger, they're bulkier. I like the look of them more. I like
They're
both.
the ones you think of
when you think of bison. Yeah. And
it's
as
true.
much as I like both, but they're not so much the ones that sway it for me. It's pumas,
Yeah.
it's alligators,
Mm-hmm.
it's alligator snapping turtles, and believe it or not, like bighorn sheep and pronghorn.
I was going to say pronghorn.
Two species of hoose stock, which I'm not a massive hoose stock person, but they're amazing like creatures. I've always wanted to see them. They're the ones that sort of win it for me in that sense. However, I do have a caveat on this. I think bird-wise, we're better in Europe than North America.
I agree.
There are
I
some
agree.
species that it's a really hard call for. I love turkeys.
Condors.
And they've got condors and they've got hummingbirds and
Hummingbirds.
cardinals. However, something more about capercaillie and
Capercaillie are awesome.
hoopie and a lot of the birds that we get as well. Certainly, if you take Europe as a whole, we get a lot of African birds that turn up there for a good chunk of the year. Whereas North America gets a good amount of South American birds that turn up for the year. But I'm just a bit more enamored with with Europe for its bird life than North America. But when it comes to mammals and reptiles, it's got to be North America for that.
Can I add the other reason? I forgot to say this just now, but the other reason why I would choose North America, and this might not be fair, because you don't appreciate what you've got on your own doorstep. I mean, in Britain we're a green desert, but Europe being our next doorstep, I
mean, we are part of Europe.
Yeah,
as much as politicians would like to pretend we're not.
But the other reason why I say America is that there's still at least psychologically it seems like there's this feeling of untamed wilderness.
Yeah,
there are the Rockies, the Everglades. These are places that have been taken over by humans. There's no doubt.
Places like Finland and Norway and parts of Germany. But
I wonder if I wonder if it's because it's not on my doorstep, and so I'm not aware of what's on our doorstep as much as I am with something exotic, shall we say?
Yeah.
But it seems to me that there's a little bit perhaps not as touched by the human hand out there, and I'm not so sure that that's true. It's just the feeling that I get. It's
probably more popularized, yeah. So that's this week's question. It's going to be a nice, easy, non sort of inflammatory one in any way, shape, or form, and don't let politics make your decision either.
No, just go down the same routes we did. It could have been quite easy. It's the nature we're guns.
Take people out of the picture.
Yes,
purely the wildlife.
Just the wildlife and the wild places.
Yeah. So that question will be up on our Facebook page for you to basically join in on. Let us know your thoughts. You can also do that on our YouTube comments page. Feel free to stick that down in the comments. In fact, we've got a late one that's come in.
We do have a late comer. This was for the
Pteranodon, I believe.
Pterosaur, which was our Pteranodon episode, and it comes to us from. Right, I apologize if I get your user handle wrong here. It's either Rosalie or Rosalie 9961, and they say that they're cheating a bit because it's 3. So the question was, what's your favorite pterosaur? Yeah. Cheating a bit because it's 3, but I'd thought not to limit myself like you guys did. Plus, I'm fighting with myself all day if I only choose one. Fair enough. Number 1 she lists is Anorognathus. Sorry,
Anorognathus.
I stalled on that name. Cute little bug-eyed bug-eating owl-back pterosaur. Yeah. Number 2, Quetzalcoatlus. I mean, how could you not love the King of the Skies? Also, Walking with Dinosaurs sadly did a bit of a bad job with them, but we forgive. And then number 3, Tupandactylus. It and other members of the Tabajaridae, really cool to me with their large head crest. They do, and it's not just the Tabajaridae, but there's a lot of them that have these really interesting head crests, and I certainly think Tupandactylus is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, you can get in contact with us that way. You can also get in contact with us through our emails, which is the nathistorykcupboard@gmail.com. And I believe we've got some emails.
We do. They both come to us from a long-term listener and Patreon of the podcast, Jen Greenhall. So the first one is titled Chimpanzee. So I think she's gotten herself behind again. So she says, Jen Greenhall says, "Hello, lovelies. So I've just caught up with on the chimpanzee episode and thought you would be amused to know that as Gareth was talking about behaviour and facial expressions, I was doing them in my car on the way home. We went to Dorset on our annual holiday down there, Ladies' Week. Our whippet sustained an injury as soon as we got there, which curtailed our adventures. But we did get to Charmouth. Attached is our haul." She sent us some photos of some of their finds. "Do you have a PO box? I have something to send you. Nothing much, just a sticker I thought might fit in the cupboard. Keep up the good work, Jen." So that's very kind of you. We don't currently have a PO box, do we? We will answer you in email format for that one.
Yeah.
But the pictures of the fossils are really cool.
Oh, you went all the way to Dorset and Charmouth, and talking about chimps, you should have gone to Monkey World to go and see some of the chimps there, which should be, well, yeah, would definitely be quite cool. If you get the chance to go back there, definitely go and go visit that place. Yeah. Any other?
The other one, it comes to us from Jen Greenhall again.
Okay.
She says, again, "Hello, lovelies. This popped up on my Facebook feed. It's an interesting little article." And she sent us...
I see a picture of a pig.
Yeah, it's an article about Panage, which is, at the time of her sending this, had just begun in the New Forest. Every autumn, the pigs are released into the forest to eat the fallen acorns, beech mast, chestnuts, and other things. And I'll have a look into that article, and it might come up next week in the news segment.
I don't know why, but the thought of acorn-fed bacon just sounds quite nice.
I can tell you from experience that some of the best pork I've ever had was been when I lived in just outside of Barcelona, kind of between Barcelona and in the Pyrenees, really, now that I think about it. And the pig there, the boar there, is all kind of put out to pasture on the mountainsides.
Nice.
And they're fed almost exclusively on acorns. And the pork is fantastically tasty.
I feel really hungry now. We're going to have to make a bacon sandwich or something.
One of the best parts of the pork that you can have out there is either just above the trotter or the cheekbone here.
Oh,
very nice.
Nice.
I think my mouth water now.
Well, let's quickly move on. So another way you can get in contact with us is through our Patreon, and Aaron's going to tell us all about that now.
I certainly am. Every week, we like to give a little love back to our wonderful Patreon supporters. Now, these are the cupboard dwellers who are kind enough to support us through a monetary contribution, for which we are grateful beyond words. And these people are, of course, Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea McKee, and Nick to Nick. Guys, your financial contributions are actively helping us here in the Natural History Cupboard in a myriad of ways. Now, we really appreciate all of the support that our cupboard dwellers do for us, whether that's through watching and listening, sharing, subscribing, liking, commenting. Even if you just say hello, we will do our best to try and get back to you. And all sorts of other things that you do for us, like sending in articles that Louisa Leary often does. But if you feel we've earned it and you're considering joining our Patreon, there are two options through which you can do so. Those are the Animal Ambassadors and the Nature Nerd tiers. And there'll be more information on that on the Patreon site itself. But with that said, all that's left is to once again thank you guys, the Patreon support, specifically an extra special thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So you can, like Aaron said, you can support us in a myriad of other ways, which don't require any financial contribution as well, by liking, subscribing, or sharing any of the articles that we put up on our social media, or just by letting people know about the episodes as well, and also our YouTube episodes as well. I'll tell you what, TikTok's been going off a bit this week. We've had quite a few new people. I've been throwing up the odd video.
I keep saying I need to do more on TikTok. Actually, what I need to do is actually start doing it. I've never done anything on TikTok for this podcast or for myself.
Hopefully,
I've really resisted.
Hopefully, welcome any new listeners or viewers that have come in from that as well.
Hopefully, it translates.
So that's always quite good. But yeah, that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode.
It certainly does.
Big thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It was good moosing around the hoose.
Yeah, what do you know?
I managed to
sorry, Canadian listeners.
Managed to firmly implant that song into your head after playing it midway through us sort of getting ready for other scenes and everything.
Yeah, the worst part about that is that a little bit of inside baseball is we actually record the creature feature first. So for the rest of the podcast, he showed me this stupid song.
It's not stupid, it's a brilliant song. There's a moose loose about the hoose.
And it's been stuck in my head through the intro, the news, and the emails. And even now, I'm trying to stop myself from humming it and shake my head like this. Despite the smile, I am livid.
Do you know what you also failed to mention as well?
What's this?
It's the best cartoon version of a moose, or the two best cartoon.
From Brother Bear?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Rick Moranis and I want to say Steve Martin's the other one, I think.
I think so. They make that film. It's a very good film just without them, but they do make that film. Like, I'm trying to think of a quote, but I can't. Yeah, very good.
Two very Canadian moose.
Very Canadian moose, yeah. How come? Here's a question. Why is it? This is how good the English language is. Why is it goose and geese and not moose and meese? Well, it's clearly because of its Native American roots, but still, like this is a hill I'm gonna die on.
Because meese are much smaller. Anyway, thank you for I forgot
tolerating us,
and we'll see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
Goodbye.
That's terrible.
One does not simply let a moose loose about the hoose. I'm gonna go smack my head against the wall.
Da 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 da.